Commander Zekthar stood on the bridge of his scout vessel, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the viewing screen. His three eyes gleamed with satisfaction as his clawed hand tapped against the command console. This would be an easy mission. The species below had barely left their own planet. They sent primitive rockets into space and communicated with radio waves like children, playing with tin cans and string. The Korvathi Empire had conquered 47 star systems in the last 2 centuries. Zekthar himself had led missions to 12 different worlds. Some species fought back with laser weapons or particle beams. Others tried to negotiate. A few simply surrendered when they saw the Korvathi ships descending from the sky. But all of them eventually joined the Empire. That was how things worked in the galaxy. Scout Group Theta 9 report status, Zekthar commanded. His voice echoed through the communication system to the 4 other ships flying in perfect formation around his vessel. Scout 2, all systems operational. Stealth field at maximum efficiency, came the first response. Scout 3, ready for atmospheric entry. Scout 4, weapons offline as ordered. This should be simple observation. Scout 5, cloaking technology confirmed active. They will never see us coming. Zekthar allowed himself a small smile. The stealth technology of the Korvathi had never failed. It bent light around the ships and absorbed radar waves like a sponge soaking up water. Enemy sensors simply passed over Korvathi vessels as if they were empty space. Combined with their advanced shields and faster-than-light engines, the scout ships were practically invisible. The planet below was designated Terra 3 in the Imperial database. Initial scans showed a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, substantial water coverage, and approximately 8 billion members of the dominant species. They called themselves humans. They were divided into nearly 200 separate tribal governments that competed for resources and territory. Zekthar had read the intelligence reports with amusement. These humans still fought wars with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. They were at least 3 centuries behind Korvathi technology. Beginning atmospheric entry, Zekthar announced. Maintain formation and keep all recording equipment active. High Command wants detailed observations of their military capabilities. The 5 ships pierced through the upper atmosphere like needles sliding through fabric. The shields glowed briefly as they absorbed the heat of entry, then returned to their normal invisible state. Below them, vast oceans sparkled in the sunlight. Continents stretched across the planet's surface, dotted with cities that glowed with artificial lights even during daytime. Descending to observation altitude, Scout 2 reported. 20,000 meters and dropping. Zekthar watched his instruments carefully. Everything appeared normal. The planet's electromagnetic field was within expected parameters. There were no unusual gravitational anomalies. The humans below continued their daily activities without any sign they detected the Korvathi presence. Sir, I'm picking up unusual activity on the scanning frequencies, his sensor officer reported. The young Korvathi female touched her console with uncertainty. Multiple radar installations are active across the planet's surface. More than I expected. Irrelevant, Zekthar replied. Our stealth fields can handle primitive radar. Continue descent. The ships dropped lower. 15,000 meters. 10,000 meters. The surface became clearer on the viewing screens. Zekthar could see individual buildings now, roads filled with ground vehicles, aircraft moving through the sky on chemical rockets. Then Scout 5's voice crackled through the communication system. Sir, my instruments are showing some unusual readings. My power consumption is higher than calculated. The shields are working harder than they should. Compensate and continue, Zekthar ordered. He frowned at his own displays. Scout 5 was correct. The shields were drawing more power. Perhaps the atmospheric density was slightly different than their models predicted. Nothing to worry about. At 8,000 meters, Scout 4 reported a problem. Commander, my stealth field is fluctuating. I'm having to reroute power from secondary systems. Now Zekthar felt a cold sensation in his chest. Stealth field fluctuations were rare but not unheard of. However, having 2 ships experience issues on the same mission was unusual. All vessels run complete diagnostic checks. Report any anomalies immediately. The responses came back quickly. Every ship was experiencing higher than expected power drain. Their stealth systems were working perfectly according to internal diagnostics, but they required more energy than calculations suggested. Scout 2 here. Sir, I'm detecting multiple targeting systems locking onto my position. How is that possible? Our stealth should make us invisible. Zekthar's blood ran cold. Evasive maneuvers. All ships begin randomized flight patterns. Before the ships could react, Scout 4's panicked voice filled the communication channel. Something is approaching fast. Multiple objects. They're tracking me somehow. I can't shake them. Commander, they shouldn't be able to see. The transmission ended in a burst of static. Scout 4, report. Zekthar shouted. Scout 4, respond immediately. Silence. Scout 3 here. I'm reading the same thing. Objects approaching at incredible speed. They're locked onto my position. How are they doing this? We're cloaked. Another burst of static. Another ship gone. Zekthar gripped his command console. All remaining ships full power to shields and emergency ascent. Get above the atmosphere now. Scout 2 never had a chance to respond. Scout 5 managed 3 words. Something is pulling. Before its transmission died. Zekthar's ship shuddered as his pilot pushed the engines to maximum. The blue sky around them darkened as they climbed rapidly. His instruments screamed warnings. Multiple objects were approaching his vessel from different directions. Fast. Too fast for primitive technology. It's not possible, he whispered. They're not advanced enough. They can't have this technology. They're supposed to be primitive. They're supposed to be... His final transmission to the command ship in orbit was brief and confused. Something is intercepting us. Systems are failing. It's not their technology doing this. It's something else. They shouldn't be able to track cloaked vessels. They shouldn't know we're here. But they're shooting at us with perfect accuracy. How? How are they? The transmission ended. In orbit above Earth, the Korvathi command ship waited for responses that would never come. 5 advanced scout vessels had entered the atmosphere. None of them came back. Dr. Velmara stared at the data displays in the analysis chamber with growing confusion. Her silver scales reflected the blue light from dozens of screens showing telemetry data, communication logs and sensor readings from the lost scout ships. Around her, other Korvathi scientists moved quietly through the chamber, their faces showing the same bewilderment she felt. This makes no sense, she muttered, her tail twitching with frustration. Our technology is superior. Our stealth systems have never failed against any species we've encountered. High Admiral Kravok entered the chamber, his heavy footsteps making several scientists turn and bow their heads respectfully. The Admiral was old by Korvathi standards, his scales scarred from decades of military service. He had overseen the conquest of 17 worlds. He did not understand the meaning of failure. Dr. Velmara, your report, he demanded. The High Council wants answers. We have now lost 3 separate expeditions to this primitive world. 15 ships, 15 crews gone. Velmara gestured to the screens. Admiral, the data we recovered from the last transmission burst is disturbing. The ships didn't just experience equipment failure. Something actively intercepted them. Obviously, Kravok growled. The question is what and how? These humans barely have fusion technology. They haven't even established colonies on their own moon. How can they possibly threaten Korvathi vessels? Velmara pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's atmosphere. Red dots marked where each ship had vanished. Notice the pattern, Admiral. Every ship disappeared below 8,000 meters altitude. Above that height, our vessels operate normally. Below it, they begin experiencing what the crews described as system failures. The Admiral studied the display. Atmospheric interference? That was my first theory, Velmara replied. But the composition of their atmosphere is within normal parameters for Class M planets. There's nothing unusual about it that should affect our technology. She manipulated the controls and new data appeared. However, look at this. In the microseconds before we lost contact with each ship, they transmitted sensor data showing something extraordinary. The hologram shifted to show graphs and numbers. Kravok squinted at them. Explain in simple terms, Doctor. The ships detected incoming objects. Fast-moving, incredibly accurate. The objects used no advanced propulsion we can identify. They appeared to be simple chemical rockets with guidance systems. Primitive by our standards, yet somehow they locked onto our cloaked vessels with perfect accuracy. Impossible, Kravok stated flatly. Our stealth fields bend electromagnetic radiation around our ships. Their radar should pass through us without detection. Yes, Admiral, that's what should happen. Velmara pulled up another screen. But according to the last transmission from Scout Group Beta 7, the humans weren't just using radar. The sensor officer detected multiple different tracking systems all operating simultaneously. Radio frequency radar, infrared detection, optical tracking, even ground-based observers with basic telescopes. Krivok's eyes widened. Multiple redundant systems? More than that. The systems appear to belong to different human tribal factions. They weren't coordinating through a central command. They were operating independently, yet all of them detected our ships. The Admiral was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Finally, he spoke. You're telling me that their disorganized, primitive detection systems are somehow more effective than the advanced sensors of species we've conquered? I'm saying their disorganization might be exactly what makes them effective, Velmara replied carefully. Every other species we've encountered had centralized defense networks. Once we understood their detection frequencies and protocols, we could avoid them. But the humans, Admiral, they have 193 separate military organizations on that planet. Each one uses different equipment, different frequencies, different protocols. Our stealth systems can't adapt to all of them simultaneously. Krivok turned away from the displays, his tail swishing with agitation. This is unacceptable. We are the Korvathi Empire. We have conquered worlds with technology far more advanced than these humans possess. With respect, Admiral, those worlds were unified. They thought like us. They used logic and efficiency. The humans don't. Velmara called up an image of Earth. Look at their world. They're divided into competing nations that don't trust each other. They maintain separate military forces that often can't even communicate properly. They have overlapping detection networks that were designed to watch each other as much as external threats. Madness, Krivok said. Perhaps, but effective madness. Velmara showed him data from Earth's electromagnetic spectrum. Their airspace is monitored by dozens of different radar installations, many of which don't share data with each other. They have satellites from multiple nations all watching the same areas. They have aircraft constantly patrolling, looking for threats. Not because they expect alien invasion, Admiral, because they're afraid of each other. On Earth, in a secure facility beneath a mountain in Colorado, Captain Sarah Chen sat at her workstation surrounded by computer screens. She was exhausted. For the past 3 months, she had been tracking an anomaly that her superiors insisted didn't exist. There it is again, she whispered, highlighting data on one of her screens. Another one. Her colleague, Lieutenant Morrison, rolled his chair over to look. Another what? I don't see anything. Exactly, Sarah replied. That's the point. Look at the radar data from 0347 hours. There's a gap. A hole in the coverage over the Pacific. Morrison squinted at the screen. Could be equipment malfunction. Could be weather interference. Could be, Sarah agreed. Except it happens in a different location every time. And every time it happens, the hole moves in a straight line, like something traveling through our airspace. If something was traveling through our airspace, we'd see it on radar. Sarah pulled up more data. Not if it was using stealth technology more advanced than anything we have. But here's the interesting part. Every time these holes appear, they disappear suddenly. Not gradually, like something leaving detection range, just gone, instantly. You think we're shooting them down? I think someone is shooting them down, Sarah corrected. Look at this. She brought up a global map with red dots marking locations. Each disappearance corresponds with active military installations. Here, near a Russian air defense site. Here, close to a Chinese naval base. Here, within range of one of our Aegis destroyers. Morrison leaned back in his chair. You're suggesting that multiple countries are independently shooting down stealth aircraft that none of us can properly detect. I'm suggesting that whatever these things are, they're not as stealthy as they think they are. Sarah highlighted another data point. And I'm suggesting that maybe, just maybe, we're not shooting down aircraft. Then what are we shooting down? Sarah looked at her colleague with an expression that was half excitement and half fear. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Back in the Korvathi analysis chamber, Dr. Velmara presented her final conclusion to Admiral Krivok. Sir, I recommend we do not send any more ships into the planet's atmosphere until we understand exactly what we're dealing with. The humans may be primitive, but their defense systems are accidentally optimized to counter our stealth technology. Krivok's scales darkened with anger. Accidentally? You're telling me we're being defeated by accident? I'm telling you we're being defeated by paranoia, redundancy, and lack of coordination. The very things we consider weaknesses in their civilization are proving to be their greatest strength against us. The Admiral stared at the image of Earth for a long moment. Finally, he spoke in a low, dangerous voice. Then we will show them what true strength looks like. Prepare the warship Dominion's Fist for descent. If their primitive weapons can somehow detect our scouts, let them try their luck against a fully armed dreadnought with enough firepower to destroy their largest cities. Velmara felt her blood run cold. Admiral, with respect, perhaps we should— Your recommendation is noted and rejected, Doctor. The Kravathi Empire does not retreat from primitive species. We will make them understand their place in the galaxy. As the Admiral left the chamber, Velmara looked at the screens showing Earth's blue surface. Somewhere in her mind, a small voice whispered a warning that she couldn't quite articulate. The humans had no idea aliens were attacking them. And somehow, that made them even more dangerous. The warship Dominion's Fist was 3 kilometers long and carried enough weapons to reduce a continent to ash. War Master Krell stood in the command center, surrounded by hundreds of crew members manning battle stations. His forearms crossed over his armored chest as he watched Earth grow larger on the main viewing screen. "This is an insult to the Empire," Krell announced to his crew. "A primitive species has somehow destroyed 15 of our vessels. This ends today. We will descend into their atmosphere, broadcast our message of dominance, and establish Korvathi authority over this world. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction." The crew responded with ritual affirmations. They had trained for this moment. The Dominion's Fist was the pride of the Korvathi fleet, equipped with shields strong enough to withstand nuclear weapons and sensors that could detect a single ship across an entire star system. Beginning atmospheric entry, the navigation officer reported. All shields at maximum power. All weapon systems armed and ready. The massive warship pierced through Earth's atmosphere like a hammer falling from space. The shields glowed brilliant blue as they absorbed the heat of entry. Inside the ship, Krell felt the slight vibration that always accompanied atmospheric flight. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. After this demonstration of power, the humans would surrender. They always did once they understood the futility of resistance. "Prepare to broadcast on all human communication frequencies," Krell ordered. "Let them hear our terms." But before the communication officer could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. "Multiple targeting systems have locked onto our position," the sensor officer shouted. "Hundreds of them. They're coming from different locations across the planet's surface." "Impossible," Krell said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They can't see through our shields. Sir, I'm detecting incoming projectiles. They're tracking us with perfect accuracy. Impact in 30 seconds. Evasive maneuvers. Activate all countermeasures." The giant warship attempted to change course, but it was designed for space combat, not atmospheric maneuvering. It moved like a whale trying to dodge arrows. The first missiles struck the shields and the ship shuddered. "Shields holding at 93%, reported the defense officer. "But more projectiles are incoming." "Many more." Krell gripped the railing of his command platform. "How are they tracking us?" "Our stealth systems should make us invisible." "They're using multiple different tracking methods simultaneously," the sensor officer replied, his voice rising with panic. "Radio frequency radar, infrared detection, optical tracking, electromagnetic sensors I can't even identify. And they're not coming from a single source. I'm reading launch sites from at least 40 different locations." The ship shook again as more missiles impacted the shields. Then again, and again. The impacts came faster and faster as Earth's defense systems registered the threat and responded with everything they had. In a military bunker beneath Washington, D.C., alarms blared as radar screens showed something massive entering the atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. General Patterson stared at the display with wide eyes. "What in God's name is that?" he demanded. "Unknown aircraft, sir," replied the radar operator. "It's enormous. 3 kilometers long according to our readings, speed decreasing as it enters the atmosphere. Altitude 7,000 meters and descending. Get the president on the line now." Patterson turned to his weapons officer. "Scramble every fighter we have in the Pacific, and get me connections to our naval assets in the region." On the other side of the world, Russian air defense systems detected the same target. Chinese military satellites recorded its descent. Indian radar installations tracked its movement. Japanese destroyers locked weapons onto its position. British intelligence agencies shared the data with NATO. French command centers analyzed the threat. None of these countries coordinated their response. They simply saw an unidentified object of unprecedented size entering Earth's airspace, and they reacted according to their individual military protocols. They all fired. The Dominion's fist was struck by a hurricane of projectiles. Surface-to-air missiles, ship-launched interceptors, experimental railgun rounds fired from ground installations. The shields absorbed the damage, but the constant barrage was draining power at an alarming rate. "Shields at 60%, the defense officer shouted. "Power consumption exceeding maximum capacity. I'm routing power from non-essential systems." "Return fire," Krell commanded. "Destroy their launch sites." "Sir, there are too many, and they're distributed across the entire planet." "If we fire on all of them, we'll be committing genocide." Krell hesitated. The Kravathi Empire conquered worlds, but they didn't exterminate entire species. That was wasteful. A dead population couldn't serve the Empire. Another massive impact shook the ship. Systems began failing across multiple decks. The lights flickered. "Shield Generator 3 is offline." "Shields at 40%. "Sir, we need to abort the mission. We can't sustain this level of damage." Krell's pride warred with his survival instinct. His pride lost. "Emergency ascent. Get us out of the atmosphere." But it was too late. A coordinated strike from 3 different nations hit the Dominion's fist simultaneously. An American railgun round punctured the weakened shields and tore through the hull. A Russian hypersonic missile impacted the damaged section. A Chinese satellite weapon struck from above. The mighty warship began falling from the sky. "Brace for impact," Krell shouted as his ship plummeted toward the Pacific Ocean. "All hands, emergency crash protocols." The Dominion's fist hit the water like a meteor. The impact was devastating but not fatal. The ship's structural integrity held just enough to prevent complete destruction. It settled onto the ocean floor 3 kilometers beneath the surface, damaged but mostly intact. Inside, Krell regained consciousness to find his command center in chaos. Emergency lights cast red shadows across smoke-filled compartments. Crew members tended to the injured. Systems sparked and failed throughout the ship. "Damage report," Krell croaked, tasting blood in his mouth. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12 sealed. Main power offline. Running on emergency generators. Shields inoperative. Weapons offline. Life support functional but limited, sir." The officer paused. "We're at the bottom of their ocean. We can't take off. We're trapped." Krell slumped in his command chair. The pride of the Kravathi fleet, the mighty Dominion's fist, had been brought down by a species that didn't even know they were at war. On the surface, the United States Navy dispatched recovery vessels to the crash site. They arrived within hours, along with submarines and underwater drones. What they found on the ocean floor defied explanation. Captain Sarah Chen was brought in specifically for this operation. After months of tracking the anomalies, she had been proven right. And now she stood in the Situation Room as live video feeds showed a massive alien spacecraft resting on the seafloor. "My God," someone whispered. "It's real. They're real. And we shot them down," another voice added with a mixture of awe and horror. Sarah watched as underwater drones approached the damaged vessel. Signs of life were detected inside. The aliens had survived the crash. The question now was what to do about it. "We need to establish communication," she said firmly, "before anyone else decides to finish what we accidentally started." Deep below the Pacific, War Master Krell stared at his ship's external cameras as human submarines surrounded his vessel. Small robotic devices probed the hull, examining the damage. He understood what had happened now. The humans had detected his ship with their primitive but numerous sensors. They had fired upon it with their crude but effective weapons, and they had won. Not through superior technology, not through better tactics. They had won through sheer paranoid redundancy, through having so many different weapon systems that the Dominion's fist couldn't possibly avoid them all. Krell's communication officer managed to restore partial function to the external speakers. A human voice came through, speaking slowly in a language the ship's computer immediately began translating. "Attention, unknown vessel. This is the United States Navy. You are in international waters. We mean you no harm. We are attempting to establish communication. Please respond if you can understand this message." Krell would have laughed if his injuries didn't hurt so much. They meant no harm. They had just destroyed the most powerful warship in the Kravathi fleet, and they claimed they meant no harm. He activated the communication system, speaking in his own language and trusting the computers to translate. This is War Master Krell of the Korvathi Empire. We surrender, and we have many questions about your defensive capabilities. On the surface, in the Situation Room, Sarah Chen heard those words and realized that humanity had just won a war they never knew they were fighting. The real confusion was only beginning. Exactly. We're chaotic, disorganized, we don't trust each other. We maintain redundant systems because we're paranoid, and that chaos is utterly incomprehensible to them. Dr. Velmara told me that in Korvathi psychology, efficiency is the highest virtue, redundancy is waste. Competition between military organizations is insanity. The idea that we would maintain separate, non-communicating defense networks that sometimes work against each other makes no sense in their worldview. Sarah paused for effect. So they've concluded that we must be incredibly sophisticated to hide our true coordination so well. They think our chaos is a carefully calculated strategy. The chamber fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, the Chinese representative spoke quietly. You're suggesting we encourage this misunderstanding. I'm suggesting we don't correct it. The Korvathi Empire now believes Earth is too dangerous to invade. They think we have defense systems they can't understand, and military coordination they can't detect. As long as they believe that, they won't attack us. And in the meantime, we can negotiate from a position of strength we don't actually have. The American president leaned back in his chair. That's one hell of a bluff, Captain Chen. With respect, sir, it's not a bluff. We really do have the defenses we claim. They're just not what the Korvathi think they are. Our weapons work. Our detection systems work. The fact that they work by accident rather than design doesn't change their effectiveness. The Secretary General looked around the chamber. This is perhaps the strangest strategic situation in human history. We need to make a decision. Do we maintain this beneficial misunderstanding, or do we tell the truth and risk showing weakness? One by one, the representatives voiced their opinions. The debate lasted for hours, but gradually a consensus emerged. Humanity would not reveal the truth. Not because they wanted to deceive the Korvathi, but because the truth was actually less believable than the lie. As the session concluded, the Russian ambassador approached Sarah. Captain Chen, you realize what you're proposing? We must maintain our current state of disorganization and mutual paranoia to preserve the appearance of sophisticated coordination. We must continue not trusting each other so that the aliens believe we have perfect trust. It's madness, Sarah smiled. Sir, it's humanity. Madness is what we do best. 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean, War Master Krell sat in the damaged command center of the Dominion's Fist, reading the translated transcripts of the Human United Nations meeting that his intelligence officers had managed to intercept. His translator software struggled with the nuances of human language, but the general meaning was clear enough. The humans were debating whether to tell the Korvathi the truth about their defenses. Some wanted honesty. Others wanted to maintain strategic ambiguity. The debate was fierce and involved dozens of different viewpoints from dozens of different tribal factions. Krell closed the transcript and looked at Dr. Velmara, who had been rescued from the command ship in orbit and brought down to help coordinate with the humans. Doctor, you've studied these creatures. Tell me honestly, do you believe they didn't know we were attacking them? Velmara's tail twitched thoughtfully. War Master, I have analyzed their communications, their technology, and their social structures, and I have reached a conclusion that I know sounds impossible. Tell me. I believe they're telling the truth. They genuinely didn't know we were here. They shot down our ships because they have so many different military organizations with so many different detection systems that something was bound to spot us. They didn't coordinate their response because they can't coordinate. They're too busy watching each other to properly watch the sky. Krell stared at her. That's insane. Yes, War Master. That's humanity. Outside the crashed warship, human submarines circled slowly, their sensors constantly monitoring the alien vessel. On the surface, nations continued their rivalries and competitions, maintaining the same paranoid defense networks that had accidentally saved Earth from conquest. And in conference rooms and military headquarters around the world, humanity began to realize a fundamental truth. Sometimes the best strategy was no strategy at all. The Korvathi command ship remained in high orbit above Earth, visible to every telescope and satellite on the planet. Inside, High Admiral Kravok stood before a holographic display showing the blue and green world below. He had been in orbit for 3 weeks now, and each day brought new confusion. "They want to negotiate," he said to his assembled officers. "The humans have requested formal peace talks." "Peace talks?" one officer repeated. "Admiral, with respect, we didn't declare war. We sent observation missions. They shot down our ships." "Exactly," Krivok replied. "They claim they didn't know we were here. They insist the destruction of our vessels was an unfortunate misunderstanding. And yet," he gestured to the display showing Earth's defensive networks, "their military capabilities suggest otherwise. I don't know what to believe anymore." Dr. Velmara entered the conference room, her scales showing the stress of the past weeks. She had been communicating with human scientists and military officials, trying to establish protocols for the upcoming negotiations. "Admiral, the humans have proposed a location for the meeting, a city called Geneva in their Switzerland territory. It's apparently considered neutral ground." "Neutral ground," Krivok muttered. "On a planet where they shot down every ship we sent them." "Sir, I've been analyzing their communications and social structures. I believe they're being truthful when they say they didn't know we were observing them. The problem is that their truthfulness makes them more dangerous, not less." "Explain." Velmara brought up her research. "The humans maintain 193 separate governmental entities. Each entity has its own military force. These forces don't trust each other. They don't share information effectively. They maintain redundant detection systems specifically to watch each other, not external threats. And yet when our ships entered their atmosphere, all of these competing systems independently identified us as threats and engaged. But they weren't coordinating?" "No, Admiral. They were competing. Each nation wanted to be the one to shoot down the unknown aircraft. Their radio communications during our descent show confusion, accusations of whose territory we were violating, and arguments about who had the right to engage. But they all engaged anyway." Krivok sat down heavily. "We've been defeated by chaos. Worse than that, sir. We've been defeated by functional chaos. Their disorganization works." "It shouldn't, but it does." A junior officer spoke up hesitantly. "Doctor, you've spoken with their military leaders. Do they understand how unusual they are? Do they realize their defensive system is unique in the galaxy?" "That's the fascinating part," Velmara replied. "They don't think it's unusual at all. They seem to believe that all species maintain multiple competing military organizations. When I tried to explain that most civilizations have unified command structures, they looked at me as if I was describing a fantasy." The negotiations began 3 days later. The meeting took place in a large conference hall in Geneva, equipped with translation technology provided by both sides. Captain Sarah Chen led the human delegation, which included representatives from the United Nations, major military powers, and scientific advisors. War Master Krell represented the Korvathi, still recovering from his injuries but determined to understand what had happened to his ship. The two sides sat across from each other at a long table. An awkward silence filled the room before Sarah spoke first. "War Master Krell, on behalf of humanity, I want to start by saying that we regret the destruction of your vessels and the loss of life that occurred. We had no idea you were observing our planet." Krell's translator converted her words into his language. He responded carefully. "Captain Chen, I appreciate your words, but I must be honest. I find your claim of ignorance difficult to believe. Your defensive coordination was nearly perfect." Sarah blinked. "Our defensive coordination?" "War Master, there was no coordination. The United States thought you were Chinese aircraft. China thought you were American. Russia thought you were NATO. Japan thought you might be North Korean. We spent more time arguing with each other about whose jurisdiction you fell under than we did actually tracking you." Krell exchanged glances with Dr. Velmara. The scientist leaned forward. "Captain, we intercepted your communications. We know your military forces were arguing during our descent, but that's exactly what makes your defense so effective. You have so many competing systems that our stealth technology couldn't adapt to all of them." "Yes, because we can't agree on a single system," Sarah explained. "Every nation wants to use their own equipment, their own frequencies, their own protocols. It's inefficient and wasteful. We've been trying to coordinate better for decades, but national pride and security concerns keep getting in the way." "You're describing your defense system as a failure," Velmara said with confusion. "But it succeeded perfectly." "It succeeded by accident," Sarah replied. "Look, let me show you something." She brought up a display showing radar coverage over the Pacific Ocean. "See these gaps? That's where different national systems don't overlap properly. And here these areas get triple coverage because 3 different countries are watching the same airspace. It's redundant and expensive. We estimate we spend 40% more on defensive systems than we would need if we all just shared data properly. Krell stared at the display. You're telling me your defensive success was achieved through inefficiency? Through paranoid inefficiency, Sarah corrected. We don't trust each other enough to create a unified system, so we all maintain separate systems. It's wasteful, it's expensive, and apparently it's really effective against alien stealth technology. The Korvathi delegation sat in stunned silence. Finally, Krell spoke. Captain Chen, I need to understand something. When our warship, the Dominion's Fist, descended into your atmosphere, we were struck by weapons from at least 40 different locations. American missiles, Russian hypersonics, Chinese railgun rounds, and more. How did you coordinate that response if you weren't working together? Sarah pulled up the communication logs from that day. We didn't coordinate, War Master. We all independently decided to shoot you down. In fact, if you read these transcripts, you'll see we spent most of the engagement accusing each other of overreacting and demanding that everyone else stand down. The only reason we all fired was because nobody trusted anyone else to handle the situation properly. Krell struggled for words. That's insane. Welcome to humanity, Sarah replied with a tired smile. We've been doing the insane thing for thousands of years. It's kind of our specialty. A human representative from Russia spoke up. War Master, perhaps it would help if we explained our history. Humanity has never been unified. We've fought countless wars with each other. We've developed weapons specifically to use against other humans. When we built our defense systems, we weren't thinking about aliens. We were thinking about each other. You built a planetary defense network to defend against yourselves? Velmara asked in disbelief. Yes, the Russian said simply. And it turns out that a defense system designed to detect our own stealth technology works quite well against alien stealth technology too. Krell leaned back in his chair. The Korvathi Empire has conquered 47 star systems. We have integrated diverse species into our civilization. We have faced advanced weapons and sophisticated strategies, but we have never encountered a species like yours. Is that a threat? The Chinese representative asked carefully. No, Krell replied. It's a statement of confusion. We came to your world expecting to find primitives squabbling over resources. Instead, we found primitives squabbling over resources who somehow managed to defeat our finest warship. We're good at squabbling, Sarah admitted. It's practically our defining feature as a species. The negotiations continued for days. The Korvathi tried to understand human psychology. The humans tried to convince the Korvathi that they really were as disorganized as they appeared. Neither side fully succeeded. On the 5th day, they reached an agreement. The Korvathi Empire would recognize Earth as a sovereign world. They would not attempt conquest or further observation missions. In exchange, humanity would share some of their defensive technology and tactics. Though I'm not sure what good it will do you, Sarah said as they signed the treaty. Our tactics only work because we don't coordinate properly. If you tried to implement them in your empire, you'd just be adding inefficiency without gaining any benefit. Dr. Velmara had become genuinely friendly with the human scientists over the past week. As the formal negotiations concluded, she pulled Sarah aside. Captain Chen, may I ask you something honestly? Of course. Do you really not understand how extraordinary your species is? You've accomplished something no other species in the galaxy has managed. You've created a defense system that works specifically because it shouldn't work, and you did it by accident while trying to destroy each other. Sarah thought about that for a moment. Dr. Velmara, humanity has survived ice ages, diseases, wars, and disasters for hundreds of thousands of years. We've done it by being stubborn, paranoid, and refusing to agree on anything. If that accidentally makes us effective at defending our planet, then I guess we'll take the win. You're going to be famous in the Empire, Velmara said. They're already teaching courses about your defensive strategies at military academies. That's hilarious considering we don't have a strategy. That's what makes it so brilliant. As the Korvathi prepared to leave Earth's orbit, War Master Krell composed his final report to the High Council. He chose his words carefully. Earth has been classified as a protected world. The species is technologically inferior, but strategically unpredictable. Their defensive capabilities exceed their technological level, through methods we do not fully understand. Recommend avoiding this system until we have better intelligence on their coordination protocols. He paused before adding one final note. They claim to have no coordination protocols. I am unsure whether to believe them. If they are telling the truth, they are the most dangerous species we have encountered. If they are lying, they are the most sophisticated. Either way, I recommend caution. The Korvathi ships departed Earth system 3 weeks after the treaty was signed. They left behind observation satellites and communication relays, but no ships entered the atmosphere. On Earth, life returned to normal. Nations continued competing with each other. Military forces maintained their separate command structures. Defense systems continued to overlap inefficiently. And everyone agreed not to mention to the aliens that their missiles weren't even designed to hit spacecraft. They were designed to hit aircraft and incoming missiles. The fact that they worked on alien spaceships was just another happy accident. Sarah Chen was promoted to admiral and put in charge of Earth's first official extraterrestrial contact division. On her first day in the new job, her assistant asked what their strategy should be for future alien encounters. Sarah thought about all the chaos, confusion, and dysfunction that had somehow saved humanity from conquest. She thought about the Korvathi warship sitting at the bottom of the Pacific, brought down by missiles from a dozen different countries that barely communicated with each other. She thought about humanity's complete inability to work together, and how that very inability had become their greatest strength. Our strategy, she finally said, is to keep doing exactly what we've been doing. Don't trust anyone, maintain redundant systems, argue about everything, and shoot first if something weird appears in our airspace. That's not a strategy, Admiral. That's just chaos, Sarah smiled. I know, and apparently chaos is what we're best at. Somewhere in deep space, in a Korvathi military academy, a young cadet raised their hand during a lecture on human defensive tactics. Instructor, I don't understand. How can we defend against their strategy if they have no strategy? The instructor, a veteran of the Earth campaign, could only shake their head. That cadet is exactly the question that the entire Korvathi Empire is trying to answer. And that's why we don't go near Earth anymore. The lesson that day was simple. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who doesn't know what they're doing, because you can't predict their next move when they don't know it themselves. Humanity had stumbled into becoming a galactic power through sheer accident, dysfunction, and paranoid redundancy, and they were perfectly fine with that.